Going. Good morning. I am Dr. Antiqua Hunter, your state homeless coordinator here at the Louisiana Department of Education. And it is indeed an honor to be before you this morning to share information on the ARP Homeless II Funding. I also have with me Ms. Laverne Dunn, who is our state homeless consultant, and she will be assisting me with responding to questions in the chat box that you might have as I go through the presentation. I will be sending out the presentation following the session. So if you don't have to try to write anything down, we'll send this out to you all to make sure that you have the information. It is our hope today to be able to inform you guys on the use of ARP Homeless II funding. Many of you received ARP Homeless I funding. So we're coming back with another bucket of money, all right? We want to share guidelines and timeframes of spending the funds with you. We want to discuss the uses of funds and how it will appear in the Achieve application in EEMS and the dates. We will share next steps and then provide you guys with some general announcements as a whole. All right, so for those of you that were not able to receive the ARP Part 1 funding, which went out to our McKinney-Vento subgrantees, just some background on ARP Part 2. On March 11, 2021, President Biden signed the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021 into law. In recognition of the extraordinary impacts of COVID-19 pandemic on students experiencing homelessness. The ARP included an unprecedented $800 million to support the specific needs of homeless children and youth. And we're calling it the ARP funding. State educational agencies and LEAs, we must use ARP funds to identify homeless children and youth, to provide homeless children and youth with wraparound services, to address the challenges of COVID-19, and to enable homeless children and youth to attend school and participate fully in activities. The department released the funds in 2 separate disbursements. Like I said before, we had ARP Part 1 that we dispersed back in June, and then this month we will be dispersing Part 2 of those funds. For Part 1, the U.S. Department of Ed, received an unprecedented amount of money, and of course we were to withhold 25% at the state level, and it's the same thing for ARP Homeless II. We're pushing out 75% of those funds. Now, with ARP, when we talk about specifically to Louisiana and the types of funding that we received, we received over $4 million for Part 1 and almost over 12 million for Part 2. All right, Part 1 went out to our subgrantees, and they already have that and they're expending their funds. Those of you that submitted applications, I will be pushing those out today. So you should have it returned back to you all on today for those that have submitted amendments to that application. ARP Homeless II, we will be releasing that application on November 11th. So you guys will be able to go into your Achieve application. That's where it will be housed and access those funds. And we utilized a different formula than ARP Homeless I, all right, for the ARP Homeless II funding. And we'll talk about how the formula that was used to come up with the allocations in a few minutes. All right, so let's look at the use of funds and the timeline. ARP Homeless I and Homeless II funds should supplement the support and services provided with ARP ESSER funds, and does not replace, and this is important, it does not replace the use of ARP ESSER funds to support the needs of students experiencing homelessness. All of the provisions of the homeless McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act applies for ARP Homeless 1 and 2 funds. All right, ARP Homeless 1 and 2 funds are available from April 23rd, 21 through September 30th of 2024. But the deadline to draw the funds down, so they must be obligated by September 30th of 2024, but you have until January 31st, 2025 to ensure that all of the funds have been drawn down. Given the purpose of ARP homeless funds, they may be used for pre-award costs. All right, so if you incurred any costs to service students experiencing homelessness prior to November, you can go back and backdate it all the way to from March 13th, when the national emergency was declared. Reminder about comparable services. Any activity or service that is provided to all or non-homeless students by an LEA cannot be reimbursed only for homeless students. So that's very important that you guys understand that if you are doing something for all students, you can't say, okay, we're gonna pay for it out of ESSER funds for everyone else, and then we'll just use the ARP Homeless II funding just for our homeless students. You cannot do that. However you're paying for it for all students, homeless students should be included in it. Now, if it's something that's separate, I like to say extra, additional than what you're doing for every other child in the LEA, then you can use those funds, ARP funds specifically for homeless students, because you're going above and beyond what you're doing for other students with that program. All right, so let's take a look at the formula, the distribution formula. How did you guys receive the funding? You all received a survey not too long ago, and you were to go in and first of all, let us know whether or not you wanted to accept the funds and a general idea of how much you would be receiving. We chose to do that in Louisiana on the front end because we noticed that a lot of other states, they did it on the back end and they were constantly having to revise the allocation amounts because they had some LEAs that did not accept the funding. And so rather than constantly coming back saying, hey, your allocations amount has changed, we rather know who was accepting and who was declining the funds on the front end. So what the amounts that you received may fluctuate a little bit more because now that we have the responses from all of our LEAs, some did decline. I think we had maybe 25 or 26 LEAs that declined the funds. So because they declined, that means it put money back into the bucket of money. So you guys, your allocations may increase a little bit from what was shared with you previously. All right, so each SCA must award subgrants by allocating at least 75% of the big bucket of money received under ARP Homeless II to LEAs. And the way we distributed that, we had to take 50% in proportion to the amount that each LEA received under Title I, Part A for the 2020 school year. So we had to look at your allocations and look at the proportion that you guys contribute to the Title I, Part A, and take 50% of that. And then we had to take 50% of the in proportion to the number of homeless children and youth identified by each LEA relative to all LEAs in the state. And we used the greater number from either 2018-19 or 2019-20. So whichever number was highest with your homeless student count, that was the year we utilized. All right, school year 2020-21, homeless enrollment counts could not be used for ARP Homeless II formula unless they were a brand new school that just opened within the last 5 months. So we had to use either the 2018 school year or the 2019, whichever one was highest. So like I said before, the funds will appear in the Achieve app on November 11th. And it's just a screenshot to show you where you will be able to see it. You'll see under allocations, you should see your amount appear. It's going to say homeless ARP. And then when you get to the budget detail page, the only thing that will be different, it'll be the same, is just that ARP Homeless II funding will appear in the drop-down menu. So you'll just, along with your other funding streams, ARP Homeless II will just be added to the drop down, and you will just click on that and you know, write the activities you plan on funding with those allocations. All right, so those of you that needed to form a consortium, and I know there were, you know, a few of you that did, in order to receive a subgrant on its own, an LEA must have an ARP Homeless II allocation of at least $5,000. So if your LEA did not generate $5,000 based off of the formula alone, you must, if you want the funds, enter into a consortium. All right, if an LEA's allocation based on the formula described in the previous slide is less than 5,000, it must apply in consortium with one or more LEAs that raise the combined allocation to at least $5,000 or more. An LEA could form or join a consortium with other LEAs with an allocation amount less than 5,000, okay? An LEA with an allocation less than 5,000 may also form a consortium with an LEA whose allocation is already over $5,000. And the U.S. Department of Ed chose that $5,000 threshold because they said, you know, you need at least that amount to be able to do something significant with students experiencing homelessness. The LEAs do not have to be contiguous or neighboring LEAs. So someone in South Louisiana could form a consortium with someone in North Louisiana. That's perfectly fine. It is recommended that the fiscal agent, so you have to select who's going to be the fiscal agent. It's recommended that it's identified and an MOU is signed between all LEAs involved, acknowledging who the fiscal agent will be. So if you form, and this is very important, if you chose to enter into a consortium with another LEA because you did not generate at least $5,000, someone will have to say that they will take ownership of being the fiscal agent. Now, I'm saying this because you guys need to understand that if you're in a consortium, you're not going to receive the funding, all right? The fiscal agent will receive the funding, but you will receive the services, all right? So that's very important for you to understand. You will not receive the funding, so you won't have an allocation amount in your Achieve application, but you will receive the services that are provided from that LEA that's going to serve as the fiscal agent. All right, we ask that you please send a copy of the signed MOUs to laverne.dunn@la.gov by November 12th. And the fiscal agent must upload a copy of the signed MOU in the Achieve application upon submission. So if you need an example of an MOU that we've used in the past, just let Laverne know. We can send you the template and you can just swap out some names, the LEA's names, and then we will get all the LEAs that are signing up to be a part of the consortium, get the signatures saying that they agree. And then you will just get that email back over to Laverne by November 12th. And then you will just upload a copy of that MOU in the Achieve application as well. So those of you, because it's not a whole lot of you, but those of you that are entering to consortiums, please, we're here to help you. If you have any questions, let us know. But once again, the funding will go to the fiscal agent, and then they will be responsible of ensuring that the services are being provided to the LEAs that has said that they would like to go into a consortium. All right, so let's talk about the use of funds. What can you utilize funds on? Now, those of you, my McKinney-Vento subgrantees, I know, and my, which is my ARP Homeless I recipients, you're very familiar with this. So I'm going to be calling on you. I'm letting you know now so that you can share some examples from our, to our friends that are new to the services and supports that are provided through McKinney-Vento, to McKinney-Vento students. So the uses of funds are here. You can provide tutoring, supplemental instruction, enriched educational services. Now, what you see here, these are the typical things that you would normally be able to do for McKinney-Vento for McKinney-Vento students, all right? And then ARP allowed some additional things to be done. So that's why you see both lists provided to you, because under the law, you can still use it on anything that you would normally be able to spend on McKinney-Vento students. But then ARP provides some additional things you can do in addition to what you would normally be able to do. All right, you can provide expedited evaluations of the strengths and needs of homeless children and youth, provide professional development and other activities for educators and specialized instructional support personnel that are designed to heighten the understanding and sensitivity. You can do referral services to homeless children and youth for medical, dental, mental, and other services. Now, some of these things don't require any funding, but these are services you can provide. You can provide assistance to defray the excess cost of transportation. You will be able to developmentally appropriate early childhood education programs not otherwise provided through the federal, state, or local funding for preschool age children. You can provide services and assistance to attract, engage, and retain homeless children and youth, particularly homeless children and youth who are not enrolled in school, especially unaccompanied youth. That's a big one. You can provide before and after school mentoring and summer programs. We're really focusing on summer programs because that's important. Those students are not able to do a lot of things in the summer, or they may, deal with food insecurities. And so providing those summer programs is a great outlet to others, to the students experiencing homelessness. All right, you can, number 9, the payment of fees and other costs associated with tracking, obtaining, and transferring records necessary to enroll homeless children and youth in school. So if there's any fees that are needed, you can use on that. Education and training to the parents and guardians of homeless children and youth about the rights. So if you want to hold some type of PD for parents, you can do that. Development of coordination between schools and agencies providing services to homeless children and youth. Provision of specialized instructional support services, including violence prevention, counseling, you can do that. Activities to address particular needs of homeless children and youth may arise from domestic violence. The adaptation of space and purchase of supplies for non-school facilities. So if you have to do something in a shelter, you're able to use funds for that. The provision of school supplies, including those supplies to be distributed at shelters or temporary housing facilities. You can use it for that. And then and this is key, this is number 16, extraordinary or emergency assistance needed to enable homeless children and youth to attend school. So this extraordinary, it will cover a wide gamut of things that might come up that you might not do for all other homeless students, but for this particular family, this is an extraordinary need. You can do that. All right, so let's take a look at ARP specifically. What are some additional things that you can do? We really stress wraparound services. That's super important, but you can also purchase cell phones, all right, or other technology devices for unaccompanied youth. And we know that unaccompanied youth are those students that may not be in the supervision of an adult. They're no longer with their parents. For whatever reason, they've left home. They may be living with a friend or another adult. We call it couch surfing, where they're staying from sleeping on one sofa to the next, wherever they can be. You can purchase cell phones for those students. Another thing we're very familiar with the high-speed internet services. We've been doing that a lot with ESSER. So just make sure, once again, if you've been funding this with other ESSER funds, you cannot just start funding it just for homeless students with ARP. You have to be able to do something additional or extra than what you've done for all other students. Another thing, you can pay for short-term temporary housing. That's new, okay? A few days in a motel. So we had some districts that have actually entered into a partnership with the hotel to say, okay, we have $10,000 allocated for housing assistance for parents experiencing homelessness, and then a family can spend up to 3 days in the hotel. So they can have something set up like that. But we're not talking about, the key here was short-term temporary housing. So if you have a family that's become homeless overnight and they're saying we need someplace to stay immediately, you can use those funds for that. But it's not for someone to go and stay a month in a hotel or 3 weeks, because we know then that's not short-term. So it needs to be short-term, that's the key. When such emergency housing is the only reasonable option, all right? For COVID-safe temporary housing, if you can't get them into a shelter, there are no other resources that are out there, then you can utilize these funds. But we first want to try all other avenues before we just go directly to that. I will say that last night I was watching the news, and it had a parent that had become homeless due to the hurricane. She had lost her job, and so they were sleeping in their U-Haul truck or van, the U-Haul van, and she had 3 children. And so of course my heart went out to her. I'm thinking, you know, why hasn't that parent been able to get assistance? Because my immediate thoughts went directly to the ARP funding. I'm like, we have funding that could help this parent get into a hotel, but she had been sleeping with her 3 children in the back of the U-Haul van because she didn't have any place else to sleep. So that would be a prime example of how you could use those funds temporarily. And then store cards or prepaid debit cards to purchase materials. And once again, we stress, do everything else you possibly can before just giving a store card out, but you can do it. You can use it with ARP, but we ask that you have protocols in place so that they're not, the cards are just not walking off. We don't know what they were spent on or who they were given to. You know, you have to have some protocols in place, and I will allow some of my McKinney-Vento sub-grantees to kind of share how they monitor to ensure that those things are happening. Okay, so support with allowable uses. If you are having questions about something, and you know, like I said, it's so many of you all, and we only have so much capacity here at the department, please reach out to your colleagues. They're more than willing to help you because they've been going through it with ARP Homeless I, so they're familiar with them. Please reach out to them and they will be able to assist. At this time, and I'll go into some of more details on what it might look like when we're getting into different areas. Those of you that are my McKinney-Vento sub-grantees, if you could come off of mute and just kind of give an example when I ask, that would be great. So let's get into it. Outreach and identification. That's important. Being able to identify students that are experiencing homelessness. Award contracts. This is a big one. To community-based organizations that are well positioned to identify historically underserved populations. We know that the pandemic, and on top of the pandemic, I mean, we've just been hit with 2 different entities, the pandemic and then the hurricanes and storms. A lot of our students have gone unidentified or have not returned to school. So our homeless numbers have dropped dramatically. And it's not that our students are no longer homeless or experiencing homelessness, is that they're not being identified. So we can utilize funding to do some outreach to some of the community organizations to say, hey, we need you to help us identify these parents. For instance, that parent that was sleeping in her U-Haul van, with her 3 children. You know, she was able to get into St. Vincent de Paul, which is a shelter here in Baton Rouge, I believe last night. But if we were able to partner in some type of way to have a direct line of communication, when those types of things are done, we can be flagged to assist the families. That would be great. At this time, would anyone like to share how they have contracted or what organizations they have reached out to award the community-based organizations with the contract for identification or outreach purposes?
So I can chime in a little bit here, Dr. Hunter. One of the things that I've done is I've reached out to our local hotels, motels, went out, put some flyers, provided them with pamphlets for families. These are because we don't have shelters in Jefferson Parish. Most of our families, we have to funnel them through Unity initially, but we have parents that just go straight to motels and hotels to find a more cheaper price place to sleep. So I went out to the different hotels in my area, provided them with pamphlets and brochures and things like that. So when families show up, they can link those families straight to me for some supports, because if they're showing up with kids and they're in our district, in our parish, then they need to be in school. So that's been working out, because I have managers calling me like directly stating we have a family that's living here and kids are not in school. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the things that I've done.
Okay, anyone else would like to share for outreach and identification? I will say that if you notice, we said professional development and other activities for educators. That's important as well, because we know teachers are the first line of defense. They're in the classrooms, they see who's coming to school, maybe not have the cleanest uniform on. So providing professional development to them is very, very important. You know, if you did something like that and then you wanted to provide stipends, if it was after school hours, you could do that, because some of you might say, man, we have so much money, I don't know how to spend it. Well, these are some suggestions of things that you can do to help spend the money. Look at the last one: develop, translate, print, and develop virtual outreach materials. So if you know you have a large ESL population in your district, you can use some of the ARP funding to get documents translated so that they will be more aware of the services that are provided. So I'm just thinking of some different things that you might not typically use your funding for to be able to assist in that area. All right, let's go on and look at wraparound services. Let's talk about that. When we talk about wraparound service, you know, we want to compete and award contracts to, once again, to those community-based organizations that are well positioned to support students experiencing homelessness. All right, develop of coordination between schools and agencies providing services to homeless children and youth. Specific program for out-of-school homeless youth. You know, you can actually develop a program or work with some of your entities, YMCA or the Boys and Girls Club. You can provide contracts for that and develop something that would be able to aid those students in providing mental health services. That's super important. Hiring staff members to work with students. Now, some of you may have asked, what if we already have a staff member and they were providing that? Can we pay that staff member? Well, if they were already doing it prior to, and they are providing it for all other students, then you have to have something at a much higher level, a much more in-depth level for homeless students to be able to utilize funding. So we ask that, you know, if you can reach out to someone new, that's great. But if not, if you're utilizing the same staff members, but you're adding additional duties, that might be something more specifically geared to homeless students, you can use funds for that. but it has to be in addition to what's already taken place or what's already happened. Do we have any social emotional support? You can use funds for that as well. Do we have any other suggestions around wraparound services or things that you guys are doing in that area? Not
Hi, this is Aisha from Only
Aisha.
Saturday.
Yes.
Yes, I'm going to implement a STEM Saturday program to help with the learning loss and also socialization skills and just, getting back into being with people. So I'm going to start that, I think, January through May to support that learning loss and to give them an outlet of being like in the shelters and things like that.
Okay, thanks.
Mhm.
Anyone else would like to share around wraparound services? All right, let's move on to instructional services. Connect students experiencing homelessness and their families to summer learning, okay, and enrichment programs this summer. It's very important. Now, let me tell you this. If you already have a summer program that's taking place, and the district says, well, hey, let's just put your homeless students in this summer program and we can utilize funding from ARP to fund the program. Will that work? And you can type it in the chat.
No.
Answer. Perfect, perfect. You guys didn't know you were going to be entered into a pop quiz, right? Because it's not anything new or additional. If you're providing it for all students, then homeless students should be included in that population. Now, if you are creating a program specifically designed for homeless students, and you're going to be doing some unique things in that summer program, then that's fine. Now, let me ask you this. If you develop a summer program specifically for homeless students, and then you have some students that are not homeless that would like to attend, can they attend your summer program? Type the response in the chat. Yes, yes, perfect, perfect. All right. So you can develop partnerships with overnight summer camps to offer programming for at-risk and McKinney-Vento youth. And I can just imagine, think about that family that I just shared that was on the news that had been sleeping in the van. And imagine it was summertime and we had an overnight summer program set up, how that would have benefited those students to be able to say, wow, I have a bed that I can sleep in for 3 nights out of the week or something like that. So, but of course there has to be a lot of protocols put in place to be able to do something like that. But you can, partner with someone to ensure that that happen, or get someone that may already have a program set up for the summer and you partner with them and maybe pay a portion of that. You can utilize the funds for that as well. Develop partnerships with parks and rec camps or other day camps to provide free summer programming. Well, it's not, free for the students because we're paying for it, but to the students, they would not have to pay. So yes, that's something that you would normally use funds for. Engage students and their families in preparations for this fall. You may have students that need coats that are homeless. Other school supplies, they may have had something at the beginning of the year. Think about uniforms that they may have outgrown. I have a 5-year-old son. What I purchased this summer, they're not fitting him right now. And I'm very shocked with that. But yeah, we're having to go and replace uniforms. So you might need to revisit that so that the child can participate fully in the educational program. The provision of specialized instructional support services are important. You can partner with local colleges and universities for tutoring opportunities. Reach out to your sororities and your fraternities that might be looking for community service hours. You can partner with them to provide instructional services. All right, now let's move on to transportation. Providing transportation to enable children and youth to attend classes and participate fully in school activities. Regional transportation centers to minimize the issue. You can use those to minimize the issues of transportation logistics. And you can contract with local transportation companies to provide transportation for students experiencing homelessness. Remember, these can be used to, for the excess costs of transporting a student to their school of origin. All right, it may be defrayed by providing gas cards or mileage reimbursement to a parent or a guardian. I know that you may have a student right now, there's a shortage of school buses or school bus drivers that are, and districts are feeling the pressures of how do we get all of the students to school? Well, if you are, and I know that there are some schools that say we can only provide, especially charter schools, we can only provide transportation on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. I mean, that literally is what has happened. We can provide transportation Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays. And the child has to figure out how to get to school Tuesdays and Thursdays. Well, if that's a student that's experiencing homelessness, those funds can be used to either reimburse the parent for their mileage of having to bring the child to school, or if you're having to pay for an Uber or taxi cab, you can use funds for that. Are there any other suggestions for transportation or unique ideas that you guys might be doing? Okay, I think I covered that. We'll move on to providing supplies and covering cost, all right? So purchasing needed supplies such as eyeglasses, school supplies, personal care items. That's important. We were talking about store cards and we'll come back to it, but you may just go and buy a large bulk of items and be able to give a Ziploc bag full of maybe deodorant, soap, toothbrush, toothpaste. You know, you can put those things in a Ziploc bag and hand out. So that's allowable. Providing access to reliable high-speed internet for students through the purchase of internet-connected devices, equipment, mobile hotspots, that's a big one. But you gotta know and have protocols in place of how do you get that back once the student leaves the school or moves on, because we're dealing with a highly transient population. You can pay fees or other costs associated with tracking, obtaining, and transferring records. That's important. Now, Laverne, if you don't mind coming off of mute, I know we had, when we're talking about devices, someone asked a question about whether or not you can pay for insurance on the devices. And so if you wanted to just speak to that, you can at this time.
Yes, you can. You can pay for insurance on devices. So that is an allowable expense because we covered that before, earlier in the year when they started doing computers, and we found out that it was an allowable expense. So yes.
Yeah, so once again, this is above and beyond what you would normally do for other students, because we know if a student experiencing homelessness drop their computer or whatever it might be, they may not be able to afford to get it replaced, so that you can justify purchasing insurance for that. So thanks, Laverne, for just that for me.
Yeah.
Let's move on. We talked about the cell phones for unaccompanied youth. Emergency needs. Unique to these funds only. Like I said before, pay for short-term housing, which is a few days in a motel, hotel. And I will say, which is reasonable and necessary. We definitely don't want to go and put a family up in the Ritz-Carlton, or, you know, now we're not saying that they have to find the lowest of the lowest, but we want to ensure, because we want them to be safe, but we want to make sure it's reasonable and it's necessary. You know, a regular hotel is fine, but not some luxury 5-star hotel. I just want to clarify that because that's important. All right. Now, those of you that have purchased store cards, do you mind sharing your protocols that you have in place to ensure that those are being handled with care and that you're mitigating any misuse of the store card. So can you come off of mute at this time and share your protocols? Okay, they may be being shy, but I've seen it in applications, so I know it's.
Yeah. Yeah, and Dr. Hunter, I
Yes.
just had a question from Brad Prudon about that, what amounts? And what I told him is a case-by-case basis and a LEA to LEA basis. So we can't say at the department that you put $10, you put $20, you put $100. You really have to look at everything we do, like on the card situations, because we have seen it. We have seen cards, how much you put on cards. So determining how much you put on cards actually is up to the LEA of how much money you put on cards and what amount you determine, you spend it to. Because I do know at some companies you can stipulate what the card is used for and how the recipient can use the card. I agree that some people are being shy when they're not, when you're asking for a volunteer, when we know you all are out there using cards.
So I will just share that from what I've seen, there are multiple people that have to sign, okay, signatures to give a card out. So a parent just can't come to Sally Joe and she says, here's a card. No, there is maybe a form that's completed, you know, what it's being used for. The parent signs it. It has the amount of the card. And then maybe the store that it's being utilized for, because it may be a Walmart gift card. That's fine. And then the parent returns the receipt and it's stapled to the form. So that's a way to manage what's being done. I've had people to say, okay, I'll go to the store if the parent gives me a list of things that they are in need of. And I'll take the card, the gift card, and go to the store and purchase the items myself, and then give the parent the receipt and give the parent the items and attach the receipt to the form. That's fine too, but it's multiple people that would have to sign off. And it's just putting those safeguards in place. Like I said before, if you don't have to use it, we always stress if you can get donations to help fund parents, we stress.
I do want to get maybe like 50 gift cards. I do, but nothing more than that.
Wait, I'm sorry?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, I'm sorry. Who's speaking?
Dr. Hunter, this is Petrie. How are you?
Good. Okay, Petrie, you can share.
Okay. One of the things that we do is that it has to be indicated on the referral that there is a need for clothing. And then once there is a need for clothing, I get with the case manager to see what options have they explored for clothing before we actually go and purchase the clothing. Say, for instance, if it's a fire, they may get a little bit more money than someone has not been in a fire, because they may have lost everything. And we do get a copy of the receipt. We purchase cards at a clothing store. So for instance, Old Navy, JCPenney's, Ross, Marshalls, places where they may be able to get more items because of the reasonable prices that they may have and the sales. We also get them to sign off that they have received the card and that they have purchased, and then ask them to bring a copy of the receipt back. Sometimes I send the staff with them as well, so that we will have the backup documentation of the receipt.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else before we move on?
Yes, this is Dr. Sanders from East Feliciana. I haven't used the cards, but I just thought about if we get the cards, we can also have them to order online. That way you can see the cart of what they're purchasing, and then you'll have a list of things right there.
That's a good suggestion. Okay. All right. So let's move on to the EGMS application. Once again, I said that the application will be available November 11th in EGMS. Now, I was just informed, let me go back to make sure I say this correctly. Okay, that consortium members will see their portion of the allocation. Okay, they will just not have to budget the funds. So if you are a part of the consortium, you will be able to see your allocation, but you won't be able to budget the forms, the funds. The physical agent will do the budgeting of the forms. All right, thank you so much. All right, now the EIC codes that you would be able to use to budget, you'll see the WRAP stands for Wraparound Services. We know what those are, just providing whatever academic supports or trauma-informed care, social emotional support, mental health services, that's included in Wraparound. C19, which is just support, or 91, that is just the needed supplies. TRANS would stand for transportation. Anything associated with that. Unaccompanied youth would be 93, 94 would be tech services. That's your, devices or mobile hotspots that might be needed. 95 is the temporary shelter, where you're able to provide temporary services. And then 96 would be your store cards. So that's want to make sure that you knew that. Now, I did want to say this. Remember everything, and we've been saying it over and over, that no, there's no one silver bullet for every child. Every family is unique. So you can't say, well, we typically spend $50 per child. No, depending on what the needs are, that one child might require more than another. Another thing with consortiums, those of you that might be forming a consortium, you guys have to come together and collaborate to talk about how do you service your students over multiple programs. Okay, so if you have school A, school B, school C, it's not a good thing to say, let's just divide it by the number of students and then that we'll just divvy up the money that way. That is not the most appropriate or effective ways to operate a consortium. Remember, it's about services. So if it is where you're dealing with store cards, you may buy a large amount of store cards and then you're able to distribute them as needed to the various programs. So it's not, okay, we bought 10 cards, let's divide, if it's 2 or 5 LEAs, we'll divide the 10 cards and give each LEA 2. Because what if that one particular LEA has 6 parents or 6 families that are in need? So you base it off of the services that are needed, not just take it and distribute it equally amongst the LEAs. That's the true intentions of a consortium, to provide services. So we're looking for equity, all right? That's important, giving each family what they're needing. All right, so next steps. We ask that you evaluate your current homeless student enrollment. Take a look at what you have. Has it increased or has it decreased? And then ask yourself why. That's a key indication if you're suffering with identification issues that there needs to be more outreach taking place. Do you need to buy more posters, get them posted in different places? Do you need to contract with those community-based organizations to help you provide services? That's important. So after you evaluate your current status, all right, analyze what services are already being provided through other funding resources. So remember, ARP is above and beyond what's already happening. So be able to check off and say, okay, is this taking place with other resources? So if it is this the best use of my funds? Or, how can I take it and make it raise it to the next level where it could apply to my McKinney-Vento students specifically. All right, look at the list of allowable uses and select high leverage activities to fund. We know our students are in great need, all right? So look at what's going to make the biggest impact to allow that student to be able to perform in the classroom and make sure that all of their needs are being met. So you look at high leverage activities. And remember, the funds should be supplemental, additional, or extra. What's going to make the biggest impact for my students if I do this? Please don't just stick with, let's just purchase backpacks and school supplies when they're in need of so much more. Please look at all of the things you can spend the money on and actually use them. Use the funds for that. And then use funding on activities that are not allowable under other funding sources. That's key thing to ARP Homeless II. All right, so as we come to a close, we have some additional announcements that I just want to share with you all before we close out. Just want to remind you all that the NACE conference, homeless conference, is this month. Okay, it's going to be held November 13th through the 16th. I'm sure there will be additional ideas that are shared at the conference of things you can utilize funding on, different programs that are available. It is a hybrid conference, so you can attend virtually or in person. I know a few of you all are attending in person, and some of you are attending virtually. I will be virtually, so I will be amongst you all, but we'll be virtually. So I'm looking forward to that in the upcoming week. Also, just want to revisit the Be Engaged bot. I spoke on that briefly. Once again, that is Mental Health Services. It's an entity out of Harvard University, all here. And we're working with them to provide the Be Engaged bot, which kind of works like Siri and Alexa. And it allows students that are experiencing homelessness, we're tailoring it to just our homeless population, to receive mental health services and tutoring services. And so right now it's free of charge for the districts. You don't have to pay anything. We're piloting it right now. And then next year, you know, if we want to move forward and spend funding, remember you have the funds until what? I'm just going to check your knowledge right now in your chat. If you can type, when does funds expire? You can type that in the chat. Yes, 2024. So you have more than enough time to still, don't feel like you have to go out and spend all of the funds right now. You have until 2024 to allocate all of your funds, obligate and draw them down. And what's the drawdown date? They must be drawn down by when? Obligate them by the 2024. And they must be drawn down by, yes, Andrew, thank you, 2025. Perfect. All right, so you have time, but we will be revisiting. I know we have 9 LEAs that have committed so far and opted in with the Be Engaged bot. So we look forward to working with you all, but we want to revisit because we've had so much put out. So there will be an additional webinar held on November 17th, and it'll just be strictly on the Be Engaged bot. And all here, I was about to say all there, all here will be present, and they will share pertinent information, answer questions you may have about the rollout. And that'll be November 17th from 1 to 2. I will be sending out the Zoom link once they send it to me. So once I get it, I will forward that to you all so you can participate. At this time, we have about 5 minutes remaining. Laverne, can you share about scholarship opportunities that are available, and then Hunger and Homeless Awareness Week?
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Hunter. I just was, I have my Nisi sweatshirt on because this week, I don't know if you can see it, is like Dr. Hunter has said, the conference is coming up on 13th through the 16th. And then Hunger and Homeless Awareness Week is November 13th through the 21st. And if you didn't know it, you still have time to promote that people are going hungry every day, but just make sure that in your district, you can do something to make people aware. But we have been, you know, that the scholarship award for Schoolhouse Connection just ended, but there's another organization out of Denver with some young people. They're offering scholarships, and it started November 1st and it ends March 22nd. And they're offering of 2022. They're offering up to $8,000 for students who are experiencing homelessness who are high school students. And I'm going to make sure that you get that information, the link that they can apply if they are experiencing homelessness. So we wanted you all to know about that scholarship opportunity. I talked to the young lady on yesterday. So I wanted you to be aware of that. Aisha just also text, she's participating with Covenant House. Every year, Covenant House has this activity that they sleep outside in preparation to make people aware of the homelessness awareness also. So that's an activity she does every year in making people aware about homelessness. Another announcement is that it's time, you all, about the October 1 count. This year, I'm happy to report I only have about 15 people who have not reported students who are experiencing homelessness, that they're saying there's 0 homeless students. So you will be getting emails from me saying that your LEA is reporting 0 homeless students, but it's only 15. Usually it's a longer list than that. So that's something I'll be reporting. You'll be getting an email from me about that. And that's pretty much it from me. Everything else is good. So thank you, Dr. Hunter, for giving me that time to share with you all. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for your usual participation. We love you, and thank you for the work that you're doing for the least of our students. All right, we thank you.
Yes, so we have 2 minutes remaining. If you all have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. Of course, you can reach out to us at any time. Is there a deadline for submitting the app in EGMS? Great question, Christopher Hines. I will have to get that deadline for you. Let me that.
But I do have while you getting that, I still am missing a great deal of homeless liaison planning worksheets. I have more than 15 that are missing of those. I'm sorry to report. There's about 50 missing. So if you have not turned in your homeless liaison planning worksheet, please work on that and try to get it to us so that we can review them and hopefully not send them back, just file them, okay?
Okay, so I will, with the email that's going to follow this session, I will be sending out the deck as well as I'll get the date for the deadline to submit the application. It opens up on the 11th. Those of you that are forming a consortium, remember to get your MOU. If you need an example of a template, I can send that to you as well. Well, Laverne can send that to you as well, but you want to get those signed and sent back to us by the 12th. I mean, you already have contacted the fiscal agent or the LEA. You just got to put something in writing. So we'll have that documentation and make sure you upload it into the Achieve app. So, okay, can families that were identified as homeless last school year still have access to ARP funds, even though they are removed from the current school year? No, so every year you must be uploading, not interviewing, but they have to renew their residency form so that you can know that they're qualifying for services. So only students that have been identified as homeless should be receiving services. Okay, so all other questions that are non-related to ARP, please reach out to us following the presentation, and we'll be sure to get right back to you.
Yes, Dr. Hunter, and another thing is that if we didn't answer your question here, please email us. It's kind of hard to, when you have long questions here, to respond. So any question that wasn't answered here, please email us and we will respond. Thank you.
Okay, and we will be able to send the link out to this recording. It's going to take a minute to get it uploaded to the system, but I will send it in today and try to get it uploaded as soon as possible. And I'll let you know when the link is available. All right, thank you guys so much for your time. We thank you for your participation in servicing our students. We appreciate all of the hard work. We know it's challenging times out there, but we know that you're there for the right reasons and our students are in good hands. So thank you, great, and have a fantastic rest of your day.